and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. Across from me, digitally at least, is Zach Ragan, also of A to Z Sports. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on iTunes, Apple, Spotify, whatever it's called now. I don't know. Wherever you get your podcast, go over there and you can get the audio version. Then if you want to watch it, like the folks that are going to watch this live stream or are already watching this live stream on YouTube, go to youtube.com, type in A to Z Sports Nashville. You'll find it there. You can see the video version of the show. Facebook also, facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports on the Twitters and Instagrams, and A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach and I write on the internet. Alrighty, we're back on track. Tennessee football. What is the correct word here? Smoked, steamrolled, annihilated, chewed up and spit out, beat to a bloody pulp, threw in a wood chipper. I don't know. Come up with whatever you would like as a description. They destroyed Missouri. 66-24. So much so that people are mad at how bad Tennessee beat Missouri. We're going to talk about it all here on the Big Orange Podcast. Zach, what's up, man?
I feel like you could just use whatever we described to, or whatever we used to describe the game last year. We just use that same phrase this year because it was pretty much the same thing, right? Like no improvement, just another thrashing of Missouri.
It's I like in the comments right here. Ezra says it's just business.
There you go. Yeah,
basically. That is all it was. And Nugs, he says those are all adequate descriptions. Thank you. I try. But long story short, Tennessee just blew the doors off of Missouri, got back on track. We're going to break all of that down. And then also a team that's not back on track is the Tennessee basketball team. They played their first actual game of the season yesterday, and things didn't go so hot against Colorado. We're going to talk briefly about that also. Maybe I saw some people who were going a little bit overboard maybe after that one, and maybe I'll try to talk you off the ledge for a couple of minutes there. We won't spend too much time on it because it is an early November game, but we'll talk about that too. And then, of course, a preview of the South Carolina game is what's going to end the show, and we'll give our full score prediction and all of that stuff. But before we get into it, as always, we got to thank our amazing sponsor, Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook Sports gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms or guys across the pond setting lines for American sports. It's just the best team of odds makers in the business behind the counter at Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, Superbook features some of the best odds and promo bets anywhere. So download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com and start your battle against Vegas right now. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. That is Superbook Sports. Download that app now. Help them because they help us keep this show going. We can get into this Missouri game because it actually is interesting. There's a lot to talk about here, and I had a good post-game show with Lucas Panzica of 104.5 The Zone. Jonathan Crompton was out this week, and Lucas filled in, and we had a great time talking about that game. But I've decompressed even more and thought about it more and watched a good chunk of the game again. And you do have to be real about this game. Tennessee won by 42 points. Also, for 3.5 quarters, the defense played pretty poorly, and the game in the third quarter was a 5-point game. So you do have to mention that. How much weight do you put on that, Zach? Should it be dwelled on at all?
I think it's something you got to consider, right? I mean, every possession every quarter. You kind of evaluate. The coaches certainly are. I mean, I guarantee you that they're not just glossing over whatever happened in the first half and into the third quarter. They're looking at that stuff and trying to correct what went wrong. So I think it's something they're worrying about. I'm not necessarily worried about it. I think, you're coming off a loss, very emotional loss. You're trying to getting your feet back under you. They turned it around. They only allowed 7 points in the second half, I believe. They opened the game up pretty, did what they wanted to offensively pretty much. So, we'll see how they start against South Carolina on the road. If they get off to a faster start, I think then we can just kind of chalk that slow start against Missouri up to, just that post Georgia loss kind of. You saw it at the beginning of the UT Martin game, right? I mean, they kind of started a little slow. It was a noon game, so I don't think it's too much to worry about. I mean, how much can you nitpick 40-some point win, right? Against one of the defense, a defense that, they'd only allowed more than 26 points once this season in that loss to Kansas State early in the year. They've been playing really well defensively. I mean, a complete turnaround from where that defense was a year ago. They brought Blake Baker in to run the defense. He's done a great job. And Tennessee was able to exploit it just like they have everyone else except Georgia.
Yeah, you can really just consider it, I think, just two sides of a coin. Like it was just Tennessee sort of shaking off the sleep in their eyes. It was a noon game, just with the whole, and it was rainy and cold. The coldest day, not of the year so far, but since summer. It's the coldest day in Knoxville to this point. And just it felt off from the very beginning. From the second you woke up, it was just gloomy here. And then, they get out there, they start slow, even though the offense was still working fine, 28 points at halftime.
I mean, how funny is that there were games where Tennessee didn't even get to 20 points under the previous coaching staff. And we're like, yeah, it was a slow start and they had 28 at halftime.
Yeah, that's the dichotomy of the Josh Heupel era at Tennessee. It's an interesting time to be a Tennessee fan when you think about that. But yeah, it was just a slow start all around. And that's why I'm just not gonna put much in it at all. It was, and I got kind of blowback for this, I guess. I tweeted to put in when Missouri went over the top on the last touchdown they scored, the last points they scored in the entire game. Ultimately, they just blew off the top of Tennessee's defense. It was terrible. I mean, total coverage breakdown, just really bad. And I tweeted, just to put this in context, and this was not even halfway through the third quarter, Missouri has only scored 23 points in an SEC game this season. That was the bulk, the most that they had scored in a game. And they had just put 24 on Tennessee. And, people were kind of like, what the heck is this? What are we doing? Missouri's offense is terrible. Brady Cook's running all over us. Come on. And then by the end of the game, that tweet is still up. And they only scored 24 points in the game. And people acted like I tweeted it after the game. They were like, oh, you stupid. They still finished with 24 points. And I'm like, I tweeted it after Tennessee gave up literally the most points that Missouri has gotten in an SEC game this season in not even 3.5 or 2.5 quarters. I was a little not happy about that one, but
it was wild how that game just kind of flipped all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Because I mean, me and you and Austin Stanley, co-owner of A to Z Sports, we're texting and we're kind of like, what is, really don't like the way this is going. This is too close. Tennessee's not pulling away. Missouri's answering every punch, and then all second half starts, and I guess that was it the touchdown pass to Jalen Hyatt where he's wide open, or was that earlier in the game? At some point in the second half, the game, it just felt like a switch flipped, and it was a completely different game. The crowd was louder. Missouri just suddenly couldn't do anything offensively. Their defense wasn't stopping Tennessee at all, really. It was very strange how it just flipped. I mean, by the end of that game, 66-24, you don't even remember that feeling of late in the second half, early in the third quarter, where you're like, okay, this is a little too close for comfort. I feel like Tennessee's going to pull away, but Missouri's played Georgia close. Is it possible they knock Tennessee off and just as quick as you think it's over pretty much?
Yeah, the real turning point, and I went back and watched to make sure that what I thought happened was what happened. So Missouri hits them over the top, and we're like, what the heck? This defense is horrendous. And then the next drive is the hiding. I guess you could call that play the hiding Hyatt,
which I did not realize until, I don't know if people follow Austin Berlage. I guess that's how he says his last name on Twitter. He does excellent breakdowns, and he sent this tweet out. I think it was last night. Kind of went through how that play was set up by some other plays, and two really interesting things that he pointed out that I think just showed the brilliance of Heupel. One, he ran that play kind of earlier in the game, except they had Princeton Fant kind of offset and kind of sprung loose for a play. The other thing, that the way they set that play up, they had everybody, the play before it, everything kind of went to the left, or certain players went to the left. So they would have those players on that side of the field for the next play, so they could get into position as quickly as possible and not have to run across to the other side of the field or somewhere else where it's going to take a while to get to. They're already where they need to be because of the way the play before set them up. And that's just shows you the brilliance of Josh Heupel and Alex Golesh. I mean, they're not just setting plays up by like what the defense sees. They're setting plays up so that their players are where they need to be as quickly as possible. And that's the magic of this offense, right? The way everybody is on the same page at all times. And I think that's what's been most impressive about this coaching staff. I don't think it gets praised enough, just the way that they've coached these kids, and there's never any confusion. Like, the offense never looks out of sorts. They always know what to do. It's amazing.
Absolutely. 100% agree. I mean, it was just another layer that Josh Heupel keeps adding. We've talked about that in weeks past. It's just one more thing. It Princeton Fan is a perfect example where they've now, rushing touchdown, throwing a touchdown. He caught a touchdown against Missouri.
That was the last one he got was the receiving touchdown.
And they just keep adding these layers where you just go like, oh, that's new. Okay, well, this is cool. And that was just another one with Jalen Hyatt hiding there, and the way that they set it up. But then I think the one, and folks are already bringing it up here in the comments. Where was it? Yeah, as Ezra says, Sampson was the switch that flipped for Tennessee.
Man.
And so Dylan Sampson, freshman running back, he comes into this game, and we'd seen him in the past, specifically in the LSU game, and he missed the block in the LSU game and got Hendon Hooker cracked in half. I mean, it was really bad. Probably the worst hit that Hendon has taken all season, maybe in his entire time at Tennessee.
That was the one where he kind of had trouble with like his sternum or something getting up, right?
Yes. And he kind of looked funky in the game after that. It ended up playing still well for the remainder of that game, but still just looked a little off. And then Sampson really hasn't played since. Not much. He's played some, but like not really. And they come in, and this kid goes for 98 yards on a touchdown out of nowhere. And what I really think it is that between Sampson coming in and that Hyatt play, it just broke Missouri's will, because they're feeling themselves a little bit. They make it a 5-point game, and they're like, oh man, maybe we could really do this. And it just flips right around, and Tennessee goes, no. You're not going to do this, and then they just, I think probably as far as Missouri's mentality went, they went like, we could do everything possible in our ability, and we're not going to catch these boys. Like that's what it felt like flipped, was where Tennessee just did these extra little folds in the offense, and all of a sudden it went to a whole other level, and just Missouri probably looked across and just went like, man, we can give them our best. It was their best. It was their best offensive output in an SEC game all season, and it just wasn't even close. And so it comes down to it. Tennessee starts just steamrolling them, and then Joe Milton comes in the game. That's where it got really fun. Joe Milton throws a pass that I know Neuheisel said it went 67 yards in the air. I counted, maybe I did my math wrong. It looked like 61 or 62. Not to like take away, that's still a absolute freaking bomb from Milton. And maybe I am doing my math wrong, but Neuheisel says 67 yards in the air to Squirrel White. Just absurd. He, I believe, was it Milton had more passing yards in that game than Will Levis did against Vanderbilt on the same day when they're lost to Vandy, which that's so funny. And I went and listened to Kentucky Sports Radio that night, and it was as good as you would have hoped. But, just all things considered, you got to put in the backups, and it was fun. And, yeah, it was close, but Tennessee just eventually you hit that point and they just go, no, you don't play with us. This isn't some game that you're going to win. We are better. And then they ran it up. And that's all you can really hope for, especially going into a pretty tough road environment. I don't know that you're going to be playing a particularly tough team this week, but a tough road environment. But on the whole, it was a good game.
Yeah, for sure. And seeing Dylan Sampson, I mean, what can you say about that kid? He seems like for so many years, Tennessee's played teams, and there's been a guy on the other team that just drives you nuts. I mean, we've seen plenty of those guys, even at schools like South Carolina, and some of those other programs that aren't typically at the top of the SEC East. Dylan Sampson, when he was on the field, he looked like the best player on the field. I mean, it was unreal how electric he was, the burst. And I've been impressed by Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. I think those guys are great running backs. I think they both kind of have a different skill set. And Jalen Wright runs harder than you would think if he can eliminate those fumbles. I mean, I think he might have a future at the next level. I mean, I think he's a really good running back. But Sampson, man, he just has something different. So, I mean, that's going to be a real fun weapon for Tennessee next year and the year after as he gets some more experience. And kind of like you talked about earlier, where Heupel keeps drawing these different types of things up and using guys in different ways. I can't wait to see how he uses Sampson, because it's not just going to be straight runs. Like, he's going to use that guy in some creative ways that go for some really big plays. I mean, that was one of the major positives coming out of the game. And then, of course, that pass from Joe Milton to Squirrel White there close to the goal line. If you're a Tennessee fan, how can you not get excited thinking about next year? I mean, obviously it's a small sample size. We haven't seen Milton play 60 minutes, and you got to string that together for 4 quarters, because if you're inconsistent for 2 or 3 drives, I mean, that's a 3 and out, and all of a sudden the other team's scoring points. And that's the one thing that can kind of get Tennessee's offense in trouble, or them in general in trouble, is if they don't, go 3 drives without scoring. So you hope Milton has found that consistency. That's my only concern going into next year. But if he has, I mean, I think somebody said it in the comments earlier, you could have another Heisman Trophy candidate in the back-to-back years. I mean, and Milton's even shown that he's a tougher runner too, because at times last year when he ran, he looked a little timid. We saw him run the ball a few times this year. He's not shying away from contact. He's kind of lowering his shoulder and getting extra yards. So that's encouraging to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, he started over Hooker initially, but I think with Hooker becoming the starter over him, I think he's taken some lessons, and really, outside of just learning how to run the offense better, I think Hooker's tenaciousness, whatever that word may be, where he just goes after it a little bit more, I think has rubbed off on Milton, and it's amazing to see. Obviously, it's kind of a off-season conversation,
and I think you have to assume that he's improved just based on the way that Hendon Hooker's improved since coming from Virginia Tech. I mean, this staff develops quarterbacks, so that's obviously a huge positive and a good sign.
Absolutely, and still, just with this offense, everything as good as Hooker's been and the wide receivers and everything, you still did see in that game a little bit. You got to win in the trenches. And I think this week against South Carolina, you have the advantage in the trenches on both sides. And so I don't foresee them struggling, but per se, things work out right. And you got some help this weekend in this. Per se, you make it to the playoff. You get a rematch with Georgia. You get to play Ohio State, whatever it may be. You're going to want to win those matchups. And I think you saw against Missouri, they initially coming out, they were really giving Tennessee trouble up front. And then the offensive line, whatever adjustments were made at halftime, it seems like they sort of got their act together and really played a nice game after they got settled in. But things can go awry when it's not working up front, and so.
Well, I think something we got to note about that too, though, is that Tennessee the last 2 weeks has played probably the 2 best defenses that they've seen this year. I mean, I would put Missouri's above Alabama's based on what we've seen from Missouri this year. I mean, it's crazy to say, but especially after last year, but they've been holding teams down. I mean, they even held Georgia to 26 points. They've been holding outside of Tennessee. They've held, and Kansas State that one game, they've held teams, below 30, below 20. So that's one of the better defenses that Tennessee's going to face in back-to-back weeks. I don't think it's necessarily that the offensive line is struggling. I think they're just it's more of a challenge. And look, sometimes the other side's going to win.
Yeah, it does happen sometimes, and just as long as they, even with the sort of slow start that they had, Cooper Mays was the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. Like they they ended up turning in a nice performance. Obviously, 66 points. It's just ridiculous. So
and over 700 total yards,
a school record, 724 yards, and the record that they beat was a game that went to overtime against Troy with Dooley. I mean,
that game should have been a blowout, but
I mean, it's just video game stuff from this Tennessee offense. Ridiculous. But all of that said, let's talk about what I actually kind of made the theme of the episode, at least in how I promoted it on YouTube and stuff. So Tennessee scored 66 points, and they had 59 points coming down the final drive of the game. I mean, you're within the final minute, and Milton hits this giant pass. And so you're basically at the goal line. And Rick Neuheisel on this broadcast, which how terrible was he that whole time? Oh my gosh. Even that CBS broadcast in general. The lead guy wasn't too bad.
I like the play-by-play guy. I thought he was pretty well prepared, but Neuheisel,
Neuheisel was terrible the entire time. He needs to just be a studio guy, if you even let him do that. And then the broadcast going out, the sound going out, and I saw other people say it wasn't just me that was having that problem. Yeah. The sound kept going out, and so I mean, it's just a terrible broadcast. But then Tennessee has 59 points. They're walking down to the goal line in the final minute, and Neuheisel's like, "Well, I hope they're just gonna kneel it here. They better just kneel it. And if they don't, I really hope they do. They better just kneel it." And of course, Josh Heupel, he's got to get these style points. He's trying to impress the committee, and rightfully so. You're trying to get to a national championship. You're not trying to just beat Missouri. This has nothing to do with it. That had way less to do with Missouri than anything. And so they just force the ball into the end zone, get 66 points, walk away. The game ends. Heupel says something to Drinkwitz. A lot of people were wondering if he went up and he was like, hey man, that wasn't personal. I bet
he did.
Like, I mean, I know a lot of people were trying to make up that Drinkwitz said all this stuff in the offseason. I mean, the stuff that Drinkwitz said, like, it was annoying, but I don't think it's anything that Josh Heupel's going to be like, F this guy. I got to stick it to him. I think he genuinely might have gone up and been like, hey, bro, like, that wasn't anything against you. I just got to do what I got to do, And I mean,
it is pretty funny, though, after Drinkwitz said he had a whole list of things that he learned from last year's game, and then Tennessee puts up more points than they did last year.
Yeah. The whole thing was pretty comical, frankly. But, Neuheisel's hemming and hawing. Oh, I can't believe that they blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, you saw after the game all these people, Tennessee is classless. And they who was it? The dude from College Game Day, Chris Fallica was.
Yeah.
He says, I wonder if the committee is going to see this. I forget exactly what he said, but he insinuated that the committee might look down on Tennessee for running the score up there. And it's like, okay, you're asking us to get style points. They bring up the style points on game day. Mm-hmm. And then they're saying, well, what if they got too many style points? And I just screw off with all of that. Screw you.
USC,
that. Dude.
USC did the exact same thing against Colorado literally the night before. They had a chance to take a knee, and they scored. They were up 50-something to 17 or whatever the score was. The game was well over, and they did the same thing. Crickets from everybody. Nobody pays attention to that.
Of course not, because nobody watches Pac-12 football. That's why.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Everybody right now is watching Tennessee. And
USC. USC is one of the teams that Tennessee's like competing with now all of a sudden to be in the playoff. Like, I think they have the edge over USC, but they're that one Pac-12 team that could cause some issues if they, win out and win the Pac-12.
Yeah, now that Oregon blew it, I do think USC kind of has a few too many tough games to wade through. To where and I think even if they went out in the Pac-12, it just seems like Tennessee has a better resume. But we'll talk about that in a second. But
Neuheisel doubled down today too.
I saw that
in Knoxville. I guess since he did the game, he was at the Knoxville Quarterback Club on Monday, and said that I mean, he's got to know his audience there. You're in Knoxville, and he's still going on about it. I'm sure he's asked about it. He's like, oh, yeah, Eli Drinkwitz is going to file that one away. No, he didn't care. I mean, Drinkwitz said in his post-game presser, it's my job to stop him. He runs his offense. We got to stop him.
And here, this is This is a great point from Elias Gray right here in the comments. He says, yep, don't make a system that incentivizes a behavior and then complain about that behavior when the coaches do that. Of course. It's ridiculous. You say you got to get style points. You got to go out and you got to smash this team's head in because we don't know if you're good or not if you don't, because Missouri's not good or whatever. And how are you going to say that to us? I mean, obviously, every Tennessee fan saw the complaining from the media and everybody else, and we just went like, they don't want us in this playoff. They don't. And they want to think that it's all these big brands. I mean, it's what makes me leery of USC, frankly, because USC, even still, for some reason, as crappy as that whole program has been in the last few years, I mean, they still have sort of a mystique, and they were beloved and won all those national championships in the mid-2000s and whatever. And who knows if the committee is just like, well, we can't have two SEC teams, so we got something arbitrary like that. And who knows? Because you give us these shifting goalposts of like, you have to win by as many points as possible. All right, we did that. Well, actually, you might have won by too many. That was disrespectful, and we don't like that either. And of course, it's going to start these conspiracy theories of everybody being like, well, what do we have to do? What do we have to do for you idiots? Because that's you can shift it all the way around. Literally, the only thing Tennessee didn't do was beat the best team in America. That's the only thing this team hasn't done. They beat the absolute hell out of the SEC West champion. Did we beat them by too much? Was 40-13 too much of a beatdown on LSU? Sorry, we apologize. This was our bad. We didn't know that we shouldn't have done that. I get so incensed with all of this. And here's what all of those people can do. Go and shove it, because Tennessee needs to score as many points as they can on every single team from here on out, and everybody can shut up about it. And that's what should happen. Tennessee can run it up however they would like, and Josh Heupel can sit in his press conference and go, I didn't lose a wink of sleep over this. Nope, I didn't think about it twice. He even gave a respectful answer at his press conference today where he got asked about it. And he said, I don't know what the right answer is there, but ultimately we just went out there and we played football. That's the right answer. I don't know what the right answer is. They're going to dock me for kneeling it down there. Oh, I didn't score enough points. Or they're going to dock me for running it in there because I scored too many points. So I don't know. I'm just going to go out there.
Well,
and
there's
play
so
football.
many
That's
layers.
Right.
There's so many layers to it. I've seen in the comments and on social media, lots of comments about it's Tennessee's second string, third string in there. Let them play. And I completely agree with that. They work hard. They practice just as hard as the starters. They don't get a lot of chances to go in there and make a play. Let them go. I mean, that's part of the college football experience. You don't want to go out there and just take a knee if you're on the second string. Like, okay, you got on the field for a play. What did you do? We took a knee. Victory formation. 60-minute game, play the game. I'm sure on the other side, Missouri's probably wanting to do the same thing. They're wanting to go out there and prove that they can stop Tennessee. They're not. I mean, what kind of mentality is that if you're looking at the other sideline saying, please stop scoring on us, we can't stop you? Like that's like a soft answer. It's something you get in youth sports when you don't want to run the score up on another team. I mean, they're in college, but they're adults. And I guarantee you almost everybody on that field's been on both sides of that at some point in their sports careers. So it's something you got to learn how to deal with either way. And if anything, if you're a competitor, it should push you to want to be better and to get better. So I don't see why, especially Neuheisel as a former head coach, I don't see why you would have any issue with that whatsoever, because it's just competition. It's what you're supposed to do out there. You're not supposed to take your foot off the gas. I've never believed in that. Obviously, Josh Heupel doesn't either, and he really doesn't seem to care what anybody thinks about it either, which is fantastic. I mean, he is not a thin-skinned guy that's worried about what the media is saying at all. He's just going to go out there and be himself and do what he thinks is best for the players on the field, and I think that's why those players play so hard for him.
Thank goodness he's not thin-skinned. That's such a relief to be in this position, and you have a coach that is doing all there. There's no, oh, well, we got to be respectful and do it. I mean, it's what's great about like Vitello too. He's just going, well, if you don't like it, beat us. And then Notre Dame did. You know what we did do against Notre Dame? Freaking throw bats around and celebrate in your face because they beat us. It's that easy. I don't know. So I love it. And
it is very similar to the vibe that Vitello's given off. It's not quite as brash. They're embracing being the villains, but they've kind of they're kind of turning into that in a little way. They went from this great story to where kind of now with this running the score up, or people are kind of like, okay, why you got to be like that? We know you have a great offense. You don't have to do all that stuff. So, you know,
Coming to
if they
stop me.
hate you, so you're doing something right, I guess.
I mean, obviously, I'm a huge proponent of anything like any braggadociousness, if that's a real word. I'm a huge trash talker. Um, surprise, surprise. Uh, and it really just warms my heart because there's so many coaches out there that don't want you to do that, and then the fan base complains, and the only thing that I ever see in a scenario like that is that you're the loser. You lost, and that's why you're complaining. If you didn't like it, you should have won. Like we spent years just being like, why can't Tennessee give 5-star recruits? Alabama's all the 5-star recruits. Well, what did we need to do? We needed to go be better on the football field, and then the 5-star recruits. What a surprise. You start getting better recruits when you have a 9, 10, 11 win season. Oh, I am shocked. It's funny how that works. So just go and it's not our problem. So run it up on everybody. I hope they beat South Carolina by 1,000 points. Because Lord knows Beamer deserves it too, but
I don't remember ever being mad that Tennessee just got completely blown, or not like mad at the other team for continuing to score. Maybe mad at Butch Jones or Jeremy Pruitt or Dooley, whoever the coach happened to be at that point, for letting it happen. I mean, there's plenty of games. I mean, Alabama beat Tennessee by like 30 plus points 4 or 5 years in a row. Georgia blew. I mean, the 2017 up until this year, really every single game was by almost 30 points. I mean, it's never like, oh my goodness, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, have some respect for Tennessee. It was never that. It was, hey, Tennessee, how about you go stop those guys and not let them do that? That would be pretty cool if you could do that. It was never the other way around. So I don't get it at all.
Yeah, I will never be one of those people. And I mean, you have to be real classless, like, punching a player in the face, something to get me on that. Like
You mean like something like George Pickens did that time to the Georgia Tech defensive back?
Something like that. I mean, I'm even somebody, this is a can of worms to open and I'm not going to go into it, but I'm somebody who I've been a big advocate. They should just allow fighting in football.
Oh,
yeah. And I've gone into it before on this show, but like, I'm one of those, like, let them say everything they want to say, and then let's have it out. Like that's how it should be. And then
still hockey mentality.
It is. It's hot. That is where it comes from. It's hockey. And you know what? It works in hockey because you get vigilante justice, and it's fine. But I digress. As I said, it's a can of worms I'm not going to open. This is a good point. Danny says, how long has it been since we could possibly worry about scoring too many points? I mean, literally ever. I mean, never. This was offensively, this was a record-breaking performance for the school. So it's really never been like that, at least not in my lifetime. But anything else with this Missouri game that you wanted to cover, Zach, before we move on to other stuff?
I think I just want to point out Jalen Hyatt after the game, just the turnaround from his approach, his mentality. He's obviously always been talented and very fast. He had 7 catches for 146 yards, a touchdown, another huge game. And in the post-game press conference, he's upset with himself because he had two pretty bad drops there in the first half on like almost back-to-back plays. I think it was the same series, and they were just inexcusable drops. I mean, one of them, I think he was trying to turn up field before he really had the ball, and the other one, maybe that one was still in his head a little bit. Let it affect the next play. But a lot of, drops happen. We've seen great players. I mean, Jamar Chase last year in preseason was dropping everything thrown his way and ended up having one of the best rookie season ever wide receiver in the NFL. So they do happen, but just Hyatt's mentality and the way that he's just disappointed in himself, and it's just going to cause him to work harder. I mean, what more can you say about that kid and the way he's turned it around? I mean, he said in the spring that he had kind of rededicated himself and got on the right track and wanted to be a part of the best offense in the SEC, and some opposing fan bases kind of ribbed him a little bit for those comments. They said it wasn't really realistic that Tennessee could have the best offense in the country, and 7 6 7 months later, I mean, it's a reality. It is, and you got to be proud of him for the way that he's kind of put it together.
I'm very excited to see what he does at South Carolina. I think some
God,
folks have said it in the comments already over here. Obviously from Irmo, South Carolina, real close to Columbia. Played.
I believe there's a coach on South Carolina staff that went to the same hospital as him.
Oh wow! So I mean, it's very personal. Will
Mm-hmm.
Muschamp didn't even recruit him. I think he tried to get on.
He
South
visited.
Carolina's, tried to get on the radar and just couldn't get anything.
Muschamp told him he was too skinny. Told him and his dad that he needed to eat some more or something. That he was too skinny. And I mean, I think this was in an article by Chris Lowe who kind of interviewed Jamie Hyatt, Jalen's dad, and his dad said they were done at that point. Like no matter what they said, like no, we're done. We're moving on to somewhere else. And that was that. South Carolina never offered, and even if they did, I think they kind of had blown it by that point. So Muschamp's not there anymore, but it's definitely personal for sure.
Yeah, this could be fun. This could be a fun.
And when
week.
this team makes things personal too. Like don't think that they don't, because we've seen it. We saw it with kind of LSU and some of the comments that Brian Kelly made. We saw it with Kentucky, especially with Will Levis. Oh yeah, toe with Alabama. Even Jacob Warren, who did an interview with Dave Hooker, and he talked about running the score up a little bit too, and pretty much admitted, hey, we're trying to make the playoff. We got to win these games in dominating fashion. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. And that's pretty much what he said.
It's that simple.
But he also he was asked if Hooker asked him if he heard Drinkwitz's comments from back in the summer about the investigation, and he's like, "Oh, I'm aware. I'm fully aware." So this team, they got a little Michael Jordan mentality where they take things personal, and I like it. I love it. Like bring it on.
I love it so much. I saw somebody tweet about Princeton Fant. They noticed his likes on Twitter were a bunch of people being like, Princeton Fant drops every ball he gets thrown his way and all this stuff, and he liked them all. And that I was like, yes, give me the pettiness.
And look, hey, Nick Saban, I don't know if many people caught this past week, but Brittany in the comments says, and Jacob Warren is the most polite guy ever. He really is, man. It
makes it even better.
Every time he speaks, I feel like he's a college professor or something, and I just need to be like sitting at a table listening, taking notes.
Glasses.
He's just he's going to be successful in whatever he does. I don't know, football or business, whatever it is, a lot of success. But anyway, this week Nick Saban talked about he didn't feel like his team was taking it personal at times, and he kind of pointed out, he's like, the other team's taking it personal. They're making it personal. If you don't make it personal, you're at a disadvantage. So you better make it personal. So if you kind of roll your eyes at the bulletin board material and stuff, it matters. And best head coach in college football history says it matters. And kind of, I felt like he was kind of pointing some fingers at Henry To'oTo'o for his "it's not personal" comments before he went in that Tennessee game.
Yeah,
I mean, I definitely think it's a positive to have that mindset.
Well, you see the history with Saban. It's kind of been an ongoing joke with Saban where he has basically had to make stuff up.
Yeah.
To be like, did you hear what they said about the best defensive line in college football? They disrespected you, and he has to make this stuff up and drum it up. I think
that's where that Will Anderson stuff about it's disrespectful that you even stepped on the field or something like that. Like, I bet that's where that kind of came from, where you're kind of having to create something to get motivated by, whatever works.
How dare this team act like we play in the same league?
Yeah.
But I love it all. It's just, it's been great. And hopefully they carry it right on into the South Carolina game, which we're going to talk about right after we talk about basketball quickly. I know it's still football season, obviously. But honestly, we wouldn't have talked about this basketball game almost at all. But Tennessee goes out and just lays a big fat egg against Colorado, and a Colorado team that 2 nights prior had been beaten by Grambling State. They lost to Grambling by like 10, and then they come and they just whip Tennessee. And there was a lot of people, and Brittany says, let's not. I'm going to make it quick. There was a lot of people that I saw after this game that they were like, well, we suck. The season's over. Everything. It's early November. I'm not going to tell you to not worry at all. It was a horrendous performance. It was really, really bad. But plenty of time to get things going. It is the second game of the season. You have another bye game coming up with Florida Gulf Coast, which, watch out. Florida Gulf Coast, they have a history of knocking off big boys in college basketball. So be careful there. But you have time to figure it out. This non-con, work through it. Rick set up a really tough non-con. So you're going to get to play some really good teams and kind of get a measuring stick for where you're at. And the main thing that I would go for in this game, before you even get into the minutia of what happened, was that Tennessee just couldn't throw a pea in the friggin' ocean in this one. I mean, they shot like 25% from the field. It was just horrific. And so, you notch that up to even 35%, which still isn't that great. And they probably win that game. They had a ton of open shots, just bricked them all. It was really, really terrible. But beyond that, I think there are actual problems. They don't have a true point guard. Zakai Ziegler is all over the place. They're playing sloppy basketball. I think Vescovi is not comfortable playing point. He's much better as a two guard. And you can't, Kennedy Chandler's not walking through that door. So what do you do? Now it's up to Rick. Like I said, plenty of time to figure it out. But you have real problems. They miss Kennedy Chandler badly. Also, Uros Plavšić, Ed says it in the comments here, there was no inside game. On top of that, Uros Plavšić goes down with an injury of indeterminate severity in that one. He didn't play for the rest of the game. Rick said he rolled his ankle.
And it swelled up. He
was in a walking boot after the game. So, I know a lot of people give Uros a hard time because he has a tough time scoring the basketball, but he's a great enforcer. And he's also a great energy man on that team. He brings a lot of energy and really gets the team hyped. And so, he takes up so much space and really helps them defensively, gives them so much extra length on defense. So that's a big loss. Kamwa is kind of timid down low. He's almost kind of a hybrid 3-4 more than he's a 4-5. Like there's problems here. They can't score inside. They don't have a 2-point game. When the threes aren't dropping, like in that game, they had nowhere to go. So Rick, get it figured out. But I'm just saying, don't panic. Give it a second. Let's see how they recalibrate and what hopefully they use it as a teaching moment and it wakes them up to just go like, hey, somebody's got to be the guy that carries us through this, that picks up the slack here because things aren't working. Who's it going to be? Is it Josiah Jordan-James? Is it Vescovi? Is it Zakai Ziegler? Whoever, get it figured out. That's all I know. So.
Yeah, I never usually worry about losses in college basketball in November too much. Look at UNC last year. For most of the season, they looked like an unranked team pretty much. They got blown out in some games, and then they just got hot at the right time in March. And that's really, look, we've seen the regular season success with Rick Barnes. If experienced it, it's fun, it's enjoyable, but now you want it in March. And that's what we're kind of really have an eye towards, is get it right by March. And nobody will think about this Colorado loss.
I think the most hope that I can give you is that I think the most athletic dude on this team, in a general sense, is Phillips, the young gun. And he has all of this time to get it honed in. And I think just like Kennedy Chandler, I think he'll be playing his best basketball by the end of the season. So that's something to look forward to. And Rick has a real history of developing guys and helping them get better. So obviously, you saw Kennedy Chandler was an absolute lightning bolt out there last year, especially by the end of the season. He just kept getting better and better and better. So you got dudes that hopefully are going to come around the bend as this season goes on. So, they're certainly not perfect. That was really, really ugly, but don't jump off the ledge yet. Give them a second. Let's see how they do in the Bahamas and all the stuff they got coming up, and we can kind of go from there. So,
but if Charlie's not jumping off the ledge, then nobody should.
Rick got a lot of slack from the SEC championship last year, where he finally broke through and won the big one, and still they petered out in the tournament. But he got some equity with me, where I kind of go like, okay, that team got markedly better as the season went along, and I was very impressed by that. And so I kind of go like, let's see what happens here. And we can kind of go from there. Basketball is a weird game. Shot 25% from the floor. As I said, shoot 35%, you probably win that game. So it can be that tenuous. All right. Now to the South Carolina game. Let's go to this first before the South Carolina game. Let's talk about the situation coming into this South Carolina game. Obviously, from here on out, Tennessee's got to win out, and they got to do it with style points impressively. Tennessee did get some help this weekend. It wasn't where we thought it was going to come from. We thought Texas might beat TCU. Well, it turns out that Quinn Ewers is terrible. Steve Sarkisian is not a good coach. And Texas's defense in that game played lights out. They were all over TCU in that one. They were smashing that quarterback. And Texas's offense could not. I believe they produced 3 points, I think. Because
it was just the return, yeah.
Yeah, the touchdown they scored was a defensive touchdown. I mean, it was just ugh.
And their defense was great except for that one bust. There was like one really bad coverage bust that TCU scored, I think, their last touchdown on.
It was. So, I mean, without that giant bust, that game would have been tied at the defensive touchdown, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, such is life. TCU does not lose. Nug says that Arch is going to decommit and go to Bama. Oh, please, God, no. The last thing they need is another great quarterback. I love their quarterback situation right now because it's not good. So, well, I mean, Bryce Young is great, but like next year, it's not good. But you don't get the help there. TCU, I don't want to say they impressed me. That offense didn't work nearly as well as I thought it probably could have in that game, and that offensive line got eaten alive. But Texas's defensive line's been good all season. They really ate up Alabama in the whatever second week, first week, whenever that game was. But even still, Texas lost to Texas Tech. Like, I'm not gonna take a ton away from that. TCU still has Baylor and Iowa State and the Big 12 championship game to lose.
Which
and I think
hopefully they play Kansas State in that.
Yes, and they had a tough game against Kansas State previously. I believe they had to come from behind to win that one. And that's probably who they'll play in the championship. So there's that. But here's the thing that's nice is everything else that happened, because realistically now, I think there's a shot that TCU runs a table and gets in, and Tennessee still gets in. I think the chance of that went up exponentially this weekend because Oregon loses. I want to say it was the first home loss they've had in 17 games or something. They talked about it there. I mean, they do not lose at home very often, and they don't lose to Washington very often either. Washington, man, I watched almost that entire game.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
They played, especially that quarterback, Penix, man. I forget what throw it was, but he had a throw in that game that went for a touchdown where I was like, how did that even? That was magic. Like, he was just throwing the pill all over the place. It was a really impressive performance, and they take down Oregon, which is nice. So Oregon, 2 losses, basically out of it. They're done. But then the real one that I think kind of shakes up the whole Pac-12 in general is that UCLA lost to Arizona later that night. Everybody was asleep and nobody saw it. But, I mean, what are you doing, UCLA? Arizona, that was their 4th win of the season. Just really terrible. And so that essentially makes the situation this. USC is your only threat from the Pac-12 remaining. TCU is your threat from the Big 12. From the Big 10, you assume it is just whoever wins the Big 10 championship. And
there's no way they're going to let 2 Big 10 teams in.
I just can't imagine that happening, but of course you never know.
The only thing that would concern me is if Michigan wins that game and they try to sneak a 1-loss Ohio State in.
I could absolutely see that.
I don't think that would happen, but I'm like, I can see a scenario where something absurd like that happens and screws Tennessee. Not that I think it'll happen by any means, but and it's just kind of like one thing to keep an eye on there.
I think there is some credence. Oh, actually, Big Ten Jeff says it here in the comments. He says they could. It depends on how bad Ohio State beats Michigan.
Now, I think if Ohio State beats Michigan, I think they'll be I think they'll leave Michigan out with one loss. I don't think they would even hesitate. I feel like Ohio State right now just carries so much more weight than Michigan, and maybe
They do.
that's my view as somebody just like most people here watching. We're in SEC country, so my view from being outside of the situation is that Ohio State is the hotter name up there.
I think if it's not like last year where Michigan just blows the doors off of Ohio State. Yeah, I think that could be a problem. And Michigan is number one defense in America. I mean, their offense is not great, but it's not bad. And so that's a concerning one, but it's just one of those, has to play itself out. But I think USC, they have Notre Dame, they have UCLA still to play. I think UCLA could absolutely win that game. It's in the Rose Bowl. So there'll be like 5 fans there from either fan base, and Lord knows what can happen in those games. But I think your options for getting knocked out of the playoff dwindled down a little bit in that one. Oregon is gone, UCLA is gone, USC. A weird one that's kind of entered the chat is North Carolina. I don't think they're going to have the resume, and I also think they're going to lose the ACC championship game to Clemson. But
is Clemson then an issue?
No,
I mean, if UNC's an issue,
Notre Dame. I mean, they lost to a team that lost to West Virginia. Come on.
I get who does UNC lost to? Who was their loss?
I want to say Notre Dame also. Actually, I think that is the case. I think they both lost to Notre Dame. If I'm thinking correctly. But
yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
At home too. At home.
Okay. So
and
they both have a pretty
Georgia
terrible
State.
loss.
Oh.
Yeah. They both have a pretty terrible loss. Notre Dame almost lost to Navy over the weekend.
UNC hasn't beat a ranked team this year.
Yeah. But they have Drake May, who's kind of a sort of Heisman dark horse, nipping at the heels of Stroud and Hooker, and I guess Blake Corum at Michigan too. I've seen a lot of people like nobody's watched Michigan play. I think go watch Michigan play, folks.
No, I don't. I'm good.
I feel like they're better than people think, and that scares me. That probably more than anything scares me. Because I think Ohio State, like most years, is completely filling themselves. And they have C.J. Stroud stuff. Michigan's just kind of lurking.
There's just not a better one-loss team or like a better resume for a one-loss team than what Tennessee has.
No.
I mean, there isn't. So even, Ohio State loses to Michigan. I'm sorry, Tennessee's got better wins. Like, I don't see how you can leave them out. Really, to me, the USC scenario kind of concerns me. If they run the table and they win the Pac-12 championship, I don't think they have a win over a ranked team either. I think because the only one they played was Utah and they lost.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have a good resume either. But if you're the Pac-12 champion with one loss, maybe the committee thinks that carries some weight and they want to get a Los Angeles school in there, and, would not shock me at all. So that kind of concerns me. To me, the biggest concern that I have is and I obviously don't think it's going to happen, is if LSU somehow beats Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, and somebody said that in the comments right here. Yeah, Power T said if LSU wins, we're out.
Well, I will say that Reese Davis, who is doesn't have a lot of fans in East Tennessee, said this week that he thinks last week that he thinks Tennessee has LSU blocked out. He doesn't see how you could put LSU, even if they beat Georgia, he said, how you could put them in over Tennessee when Tennessee beat LSU in Baton Rouge by 27 points. Like he doesn't see it, and I don't see it either. But none of us, Reese isn't on the committee. We're obviously not on the committee. You don't know how they're going to feel. An SEC champion's never been left out before. I don't know. That's one it's too much of a toss up to
a 2-loss team. It would be the first time a 2-loss team's ever made the playoff. So, I mean, it would set a precedent if they did do that. Robert says, "Hey Charlie, what's up?" Just wanted to respond to that one. Don't know. He didn't follow up. So, but yeah, that is a weird scenario. I don't think that's gonna happen. I mean,
I don't either.
It's gonna steamroll them, frankly. But
my gut says that USC loses a game and eliminates that. I think TCU wins out because Baylor didn't they lose? I mean, they looked pretty bad this
they
past
lost
week.
30. I don't know the exact score. 35-3.
And then Iowa State's not the same as they really have been under Matt Campbell. And then who knows what happens in the Big 12 championship game. But I could see TCU winning out, and then I think Tennessee with that USC loss. I think Georgia beats LSU. I think whoever loses the Ohio State Michigan games left out. I think Tennessee gets in, and I wouldn't be surprised if they jump TCU to go to the 3 seed and play Ohio State in Arizona because they don't want that rematch in the first round with Georgia.
I don't know what they're thinking in that committee. That's the biggest outlier out of all this, because we can say everything we want to about the different scenarios. It just feels like, it's what we were talking about earlier in the show. You can run the score up and get the style points like they want, but then some idiots from ESPN are like, well, that was too many style points, and that's not good either. So who knows what these people are even thinking? Because they communicate with media constantly. Some of the people on that committee basically are media, more or less, or they come from just a administration background. And so I don't know where that's gonna go, because it's a total rogue element in this whole thing. Is just, how do they even feel personally? Do Tennessee fans piss them off enough that they go, well, we can't have them in here? I don't know.
I mean, don't you? I feel like you should want Tennessee. You should want Tennessee in primetime games on ESPN. You should want them in this playoff if you are ESPN, if you are the committee, because look at how much interest there is surrounding Tennessee. I mean, I watch the playoff rankings every single year, every single week, because I'm a college football fan. I'm always locked into it, but you can just feel like it feels like in general, there's so much more interest around it this year because, and I won't say it's just because of Tennessee, but it is because there's new blood in there. There's teams that haven't been in there before. TCU's up there, Tennessee's up there. You got LSU threatening to make a comeback and coming in there, and USC and Oregon kind of on the peripheral there. Like it's made it more engaging than, okay, it's Alabama, it's Georgia, it's Ohio State, it's Oklahoma, or Clemson every single year. I mean, that gets old really quick. So I would think you would want Tennessee in, you'd want TCU in because of those types of things. It makes it interesting because that playoff last year was terrible. The 2 semifinal games were over by halftime pretty much. They were awful. You're checked out. You're moving on to something else. Championship game was interesting until Jamison Williams got hurt for Alabama, and then Georgia kind of ran off with it. But that's the playoffs almost every single year, it seems like. Rarely do we get like that Georgia-Oklahoma game with Baker Mayfield in the 2017 season. We don't get many of those. And having this parity where you're kind of getting some parity in college football, I feel like it's good for the sport. And you get Tennessee in, it's just gonna make even more parity happen.
I think you have 4 very legitimately good teams this season that could put up good semis. I think the only one that feels to me like it wouldn't be competitive is if TCU plays Georgia.
No, it would not be competitive.
I think that would be a blowout.
Imagine the hype for Tennessee, Ohio State.
Yeah, oh man, that would be a hell of a matchup. Mm-hmm. I think the committee is almost hoping TCU loses. I think you saw that in that first initial ranking where they put them behind Alabama, where they were sort of like, yeah, it'll work itself out with these guys. And then, Tennessee lost, and they were like, well, for dramas, we'll put them 4, and maybe it'll still work itself out. I think
that's know. True. If you put Tennessee at 4 last week, it pretty much eliminates most of the drama.
Yeah, I honestly think you look at the way that the games were played. I mean, even Oregon now, the way that Oregon has developed, I think they would put up a better fight against Georgia. It just specifically the way that TCU struggled in that Texas game against Texas's front 7, much less Georgia's front 7. God. I mean, come on, somebody.
Georgia's defensive line looks like it's straight out of the AFC East or something. It's unreal.
Hopefully they think they're like, well, the only team that could really give Georgia a run in that semifinal game is maybe Tennessee or something like that. I don't know. And it would be in Atlanta, which is kind of compelling too. But this can kind of be a little bridge here the South Carolina game because we do have to get that to end the show. Brent says,
"Yeah, you got to win that no matter what."
Well, yeah. He says, "Do y'all know why Tillman didn't play against Missouri? Is he trying to be eligible for next year? Now he has missed enough games." So the rationale that was given from the staff was that the field was wet and they didn't want to risk it. Was basically how they tried to sell it. They were basically like, it's just precautionary. They kind of, in sort of an insulting way to Missouri, probably not intentionally, but they were like, we don't even need this guy to win. And clearly they did accurate. Not. And so,
and he kind of said today that he expects, or Heupel said that he expects Tillman to play against South Carolina.
And last time Heupel said something like that, Tillman ultimately did play. It was the Kentucky week, I think, and then played against Georgia too. So I think he plays this week. And yeah, I mean he needs to put some more stats on paper for NFL purposes, and I know that they want to kind of protect him for NFL purposes also. In not give him further injury or get him further injured, I guess, better way to say it, or anything like that. So it's all, I think, just precautionary. But with that said, I think he'll play in the South Carolina game, and let's talk about the South Carolina game. Tennessee plays in Columbia, 7 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. Is right? Yes.
Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit doing the game.
Once again, it must have been a not great lineup on Saturday.
It's really not. I mean, the Oregon and whoever Oregon plays, but it's like a 10:30 game, and with Oregon losing, it's not quite as compelling. So
yeah,
I guess they felt like this was the most compelling game, and I think they're expecting a pretty good atmosphere. He's got to go from Bozeman to I think that's what they said, right? Where they're at this week,
Bozeman, Montana.
I think that's where they said they're at. All the way to Columbia, South Carolina. Like that's a 5-hour flight.
He's got that PJ though, the private jet. He'll be all right, I think. I would assume, right? They probably got those charters. But
yeah, it's Bozeman, Montana State.
Yeah, they do that like once a year.
Yeah.
So but this one, when the season started, a lot of people probably were like, oh, that's might be a toss-up. I don't know. South Carolina's probably better. They got Rattler this year. No. Well, the season has passed to this point, and South Carolina is not having a great one. And I think the overriding theme that you've seen from South Carolina this week is not excitement for the Tennessee game. It is that they really want their offensive coordinator fired, which is never a good sign. Marcus Satterfield and their offense has been anemic. They scored 6 points against Florida and got whipped in Gainesville. I
think they've been fool's gold all year.
Yeah.
Because you look at their wins, Georgia State, Charlotte, South Carolina State. Those are their first 3 wins. And they beat a Kentucky team that, I hate to disparage Kentucky because that's supposed to be one of Tennessee's good wins, but they just lost to Vanderbilt. You can't. Sorry, that's not a great win anymore. And then Texas A&M, who's obviously very, very, very bad at this point. They just lost to Cadillac Williams in his head coaching debut, so that's not that great of a win either. And then they did beat Vanderbilt at Vandy by 11, but that's never really a statement win.
Very impressive win.
Oddly, might be their best win at this point, considering what's happened.
Maybe.
Vandy can still get bowl eligible if they somehow beat Florida. And then, obviously, they have Tennessee last, so they probably won't. But
I mean, yeah, the way that this SEC season is shaken out in general is pretty funny. I mean, it's like some real, what's even the right word? Drama, but it's also been just hilarious as the team that's kind of hanging out in the top of the league now.
It is fun to watch everything else implode.
It really is.
And Auburn and
because I mean, we're sort of in the catbird seat up here, and like Texas A&M probably being the funniest situation where they literally can't fire this guy that is giving them one of the worst seasons in their entire history right now. I mean, 3 wins, they're eliminated from chance for a bowl game. And they're paying.
He doesn't even seem stressed. I watched his post-game press conference. He's not even like He's just like, yeah, we got to figure something out, I guess.
They said Moose Muhammad didn't play this weekend because he got caught wearing long sleeves or something. And then people went back and he's worn long sleeves a bunch of different times. Like, just who knows?
That's some old Butch Jones 2017 stuff right there.
He fell on a helmet.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Or the FIFA combo with the FIFA thing.
Oh man. Dude. I forgot about that. Was so crazy where he tweeted a picture of hung up cleats.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, I was just playing FIFA." No, you weren't. Butch Jones called you after you tweeted that and begged you to stay on the football team is what happened. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. I think. But it's some pretty ridiculous storylines. And I think South Carolina falls into that also because, people were ready to crown Beamer after this year.
Co-coach of the year, yeah.
Co-coach of the year with Josh Heupel. And Josh Heupel is 9-1, and this guy is whatever. 6-4. No,
yeah.
It is 6-4 at this point. Yeah. I mean, it just is not not good for them, and they want their offensive coordinator fired. And I think coming into this one, they did announce that the game is sold out, but then you check the comments, and it was a lot of people being like, I bet it was all Tennessee fans that bought all the tickets. It's not a great situation for South Carolina coming in, and of course, we can kind of laugh about that.
I mean, they're like, I'm not going to say that South Carolina as a program is at rock bottom, but as far as their season's going, this is rock bottom for them. They've lost 2 of 3. Like you've talked about, everybody wants Satterfield fired. It's a very unhappy fan base right now. They're reeling. They're set up for a blowout, disastrous loss.
I think the only way that it really could have gone worse is if they did lose to Texas A&M, which it was very, very close to happening. I mean, they had a tough game in that one, but regardless, I was gonna look. Let's see on Superbook Sports, our awesome sponsor. The line for this game is now 22. Tennessee is a 22-point favorite. Somebody in the comments, I think, said 21.5. Yeah, Elias Gray says 21.5 is 22 on Superbook Sports. So go download it, and if you think Tennessee's going to win by 22 plus, needless to say, the conventional wisdom is that this one is lopsided. And you look at just the different positions. Radler's having a terrible season. 8 touchdowns to 9 interceptions.
I mean, they're ready to bench him.
Yeah, the fans certainly want to bench. Yeah. I think Beamer's going to ride.
Oh yeah,
ride his.
I mean, you're bowl eligible at this point, and you got Tennessee and Clemson. You're not really gaining anything by benching him.
Exactly. So I think they're going to ride with him, and then just the skill positions, they're just not very good. And they've given up 23 sacks on the season. So I think Tennessee's defensive line should be able to eat in this one. And
they're allowing 6 more points a game, I believe, than Tennessee is. So all that talk about Tennessee's defense, which for all that talk about Tennessee's defense, they've given up 10 points total in the second halves of the last 3 games. That's Georgia, Kentucky, and Missouri. 10 total points in the second half. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you take all of that into account. This one seems lopsided in Tennessee's favor. And I guess defensively for South Carolina, they're not horrendous.
Like I said, they're giving up 26.2 points per game. Tennessee, by comparison, is giving up 21 points a game. And everybody thinks Tennessee's defense is awful, even though I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think they've had some bad moments for sure, but I don't think they're as bad as people make them out to be.
No. So Tennessee basically has an advantage, at least statistically on paper, at most positions in this one. And I think where things really come undone for South Carolina here is just the motivation factor. South Carolina gets destroyed at Florida. I think the fans are pretty disenchanted. I think there's going to be a ton of Tennessee fans in this stadium. It'll still be a majority South Carolina, and I'm sure they're going to do the sandstorm and do the whatever they do. And, it'll be a little hyped. But the second Tennessee scores that first touchdown, I think it's over. Like if Tennessee jumps out to a 14-point lead, that crowd's out of it. They're going to be like, well, here we go. This is exactly what we thought would happen. And then they're kind of done. And I just don't see it being particularly competitive if Tennessee comes out strong. And just on that point, Tennessee has all the motivation in the world to come out strong here. You got to win by 100 points if you want to. Well, maybe, or they'll dock you for that. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I think ultimately they have all the motivation to run this thing up and just kill these guys on their home field here. And I have not been given a compelling reason as to why Tennessee will not do that.
South Carolina fans aren't even giving us that this week. I mean, even with the Missouri, Kentucky, these games that we thought Tennessee was going to win, even those fan bases had a little bit of confidence. It wasn't wise confidence, but it's a little misguided. South Carolina fans don't even have that. And between that, I think this team's really going to rally around Jalen Hyatt this week because they know what it means to him. They asked Hendon Hooker about it today. They're aware of what this game means to him and just the kind of the way the spotlight's been on him all year with his breakout season. I think that's going to be kind of go into that taking it personal thing that we were talking about earlier. I think they're going to rally around him and they're going to have a lot of juice, I think, for this one.
I really, really hope so. Let it fuel you. It's an interesting comment. Greg says, this is what I needed in Cancun. Greg, are you in Cancun just bragging about it while I believe it is 40 Cold. Degrees outside right now. Greg, you lucky jerk. But thank you for listeing. We really appreciate it. Glad that we can help you out.
Or whatever.
Yeah, glad we can help you out on your already awesome vacation. But yeah, I want Jalen Hyatt to go for like 300 in this game, please. Like, let this. Obviously, the Alabama game is like his masterpiece, but let this just be, honestly, even more special. I think to him at least, just growing up there, not recruited by South Carolina. Man, it would just be so awesome to have that happen. And this team has delivered things like that all season long. Like whatever we have kind of wanted them to do, they've just delivered on really. The only one has been, of course we all wanted them to beat Georgia, and that was an extremely tall task, and Georgia's just great, and it was in Athens. But other than that, they deliver on all of that stuff, and we already talked about it earlier. They hear the noise and they take it and they get petty about it, and they go and they run with it and use that as fuel. And I think there's plenty of it here. If for nobody other than Jalen Hyatt, like I'm excited to see what happens more than I am at all trepidatious in this one. I just think that there's every motivation in the world for Tennessee to have a really strong showing here. And I think they busted through the post Georgia rustiness. They kind of got their teeth kicked in, had to sort of recalibrate. And they did that in that first half against Missouri. Thankfully, Missouri is a pretty bad football team, and they were able to do it easily. And now they're cooking again. I think this sets up nicely for Tennessee. But is there anything that gives you pause, Zach, with South Carolina at all?
No, not really. I mean, I hate to say that because I feel like there's been something about every team that Tennessee's played this year that's been a little concerning. Missouri, the way they blitz kind of similarly to Georgia, we thought might be a concern. Kentucky's defense and is Will Levis going to have a breakout game was a concern. But with South Carolina, you just really don't see it. They don't have good wins. Even the wins they have kind of been struggles. They haven't won anything convincingly. Obviously, any given Saturday, anything can happen. I mean, I'm never going to be the type that guarantees anything, but it's hard to see South Carolina just with the state of the program, what they've been through lately, where Tennessee is. They're coming off that Missouri game where they kind of got their feet back under them. It's hard for me to see a reason that South Carolina would have a shot. And then, like we've talked about a lot, the Jalen Hyatt factor. John asked how far is he from the receiving record. I believe it's 182 yards is what he would need to tie the record, which is Robert Meacham's record for yards in a year, 2006, with Eric Ainge throwing the ball to him. Man, it's just hard for me to find a reason. And I hate to say that because I feel like every week there's something that you kind of got to zone in on with the opposing team, but the defense hasn't been lights out. The offense has kind of struggled at times. Rattler hasn't been good. So it's really hard to pinpoint something to be overly concerned about. I mean, maybe that crowd can get loud. It's not going to be Athens. If they're into it, it can be troublesome or problematic to get the snap counts and we saw Tennessee have lots of issues with that in Athens with all those false starts. So to me, that's the only thing. But like you said, if you score early, you knock the crowd out of it pretty quickly, especially with what they've been through. They're going to say, oh, here we go again. Here comes 60 points from Tennessee, and they're probably going to pack it in for the night.
Yeah, the crowd is really the only thing. And if you can mitigate that by getting out quickly, that's perfect. And I think they can work through it even if they don't do that. But
hopefully they learned a lot from that Georgia game.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think they did. But like, you just look at the way that this stacks up. Like, rushing defense for South Carolina, they're the number 13 rushing defense. They give up almost in the SEC. They give up almost 200 yards on the ground. Well, Tennessee really found a groove with Sampson in that one, and then you've been getting really nice performances from Wright and Small. I mean, yeah, Tennessee could go for 200 in this game on the ground. They could also go for 400 through the air because South Carolina's, let's see, their passing defense is number 4 in the SEC. They give up 200 yards through the air, but Kentucky is the number 2 passing defense, and you threw all over them. And Alabama's the number 5 passing defense. You threw all over them. Like, you've gone against passing defenses that are in the same exact range and just annihilated them. So, like, nothing there is concerning. The matchup goes in Tennessee's favor. Points per game, I mean, Tennessee is miles ahead of South Carolina here. They want their offensive coordinator fired. I've gone through the list and just tried to be like, where is it? I think a running quarterback can be a real problem for Tennessee. Obviously, Brady Cook for Missouri did a great job for a good portion of that game. Spencer Rattler, what did we say? We looked at him before.
8 rushing yards for the season.
8 rushing yards.
Now, obviously there's some
sacks.
Yeah, there's some sacks in there, but he's not a threat on the ground. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns, very short runs. So he's not a guy that's gonna. He might scramble for 7 or 8 yards, but he's not gonna go out there and Anthony Richardson you to death.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not there for South Carolina, and I don't want to laugh it off. You can lose on any given Saturday.
Yeah,
and this team better not overlook anything. But in an analysis on paper, it's there at every single spot on the field.
I think the biggest thing that you pointed out there that I think South Carolina fans should be very worried about is the run defense. Because if you don't stop Tennessee's run, I mean, they're going to murder you. They will put up as many points as they want. If they run the ball as they want to, everything's there for them. Everything. And that's the big key to it. Getting the hooker, stopping the run. If they can't do either of those, it's going to be a really long night for them in Columbia.
Well, I guess we can go now and predict this game. I will before we do this. We can just kind of toot our own horn here. Zach Brent says, y'all and Talking Vols are my favorite. Thanks for giving us something good to listen to. Thank you, Brent. Talking Vols, of course. Boogie was on with us last 2 weeks ago, last week. Oh no, we had Josh Pate this past week.
Yeah, it was 2
weeks ago. Friend of the show. We really appreciate that. And then Greg came back and he said, I listened to your postgame with Lucas over a cigar, and I'm listening in with a cigar today, down with Beamer Ball. Greg, you're living the life. Just know that we're all envious of you with a cigar in Cancun. As I said, it's like 40 degrees outside and dark at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's predict. We laid it out. It's just on paper all there for Tennessee. What do you think is going to happen in this one, Zach?
Well, first, we have to acknowledge our terrible predictions for last week. Not really terrible, but I mean, I had Tennessee beating Missouri 41-20. A three touchdown win. You had 38-10, still even bigger margin, 28-point win. We both thought they were going to blow them out, and we still weren't even close to the correct final score on that Missouri game. So that's happened a couple of times this year because Tennessee's offense just puts up absurd amounts of points where it's like you feel silly predicting that a team's going to score 65 points against a SEC opponent. So we missed on that, but only because Josh Heupel has no cares about anybody's feelings and is just going to keep scoring at will. Since it's on the road, I will be a little conservative with my score prediction here. I don't think they're going to go full Missouri and score almost 70 points, but I do think they score more than 50. So I've got Tennessee winning 55-20 on the road this week.
55-20. Mm-hmm. That is
35-point win.
Yeah, I think that's I was gonna say it's pretty ambitious, but I honestly I'm not sure that it is. I appreciate Dustin right here in the comments. He says the biggest thing Carolina has for them is big plays. They're second in the league in big chunk plays, and our secondary is not good. I'm looking through. That's fair.
That's a good point. That's
The secondary is absolutely susceptible to that. You saw it against Missouri, unfortunately, even. But I am looking plays of 20 plus yards. Tennessee and Ole Miss are 1 and 2. South Carolina is 8. Plays of 30 plus yards. Tennessee is number 1. South Carolina is 9. Tennessee plays of 40 plus yards. Tennessee is number 1. South Carolina is 6. They have 12 40 plus plays on the season, which isn't terrible, but Tennessee has 26. And then plays of 50 plus yards. So what exactly are you referring to there? Because I'm not trying to like prove you wrong. I think with Radler, clearly they just sort of let him sit back there and try to throw. 8 rushing yards on the season. So
if you're worried about them with explosive plays, I think your instinct is to play like a soft coverage, soft shell, and kind of keep everything in front of you. But I don't like that idea, because I don't think South Carolina is dangerous enough to play them like that. Like, they're not high octane offense enough.
Yeah.
And it takes Tennessee out of what they want to do defensively, which is be aggressive. They want to fly around. They want to create havoc, get you all scheduled. They don't want to play a soft zone and keep everything in front of you. So I don't think that they should really switch up their defensive strategy. Just say, hey, if you can beat us. Let's see what you got, and play their game.
I like Elias says, they're not about explosive plays. They're about implosive plays. That's a good point.
Radler has imploded quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Again, eight touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Not ideal. So, I'll say this to everybody that's watching. A few people already have, but if you have a prediction for the game, just put it in the comments there. I'll read them off after I give my prediction here. But just go ahead and drop them in. Got 150 some odd people watching right now. We appreciate every single one of you, and you can go ahead and comment there, and we'll read off what you think is going to happen in this game. But I'll say, yeah, the advantages are all there. South Carolina's defense is a little porous. Tennessee's offense is ridiculous. South Carolina's offense is pretty stagnant to the point where they want their offensive coordinator fired. And Tennessee's defense is weak in the secondary, but has been pretty stout up front. It seems like Radler, in a lot of instances, is kind of a sitting duck, so that opens up a lane for you. There's just a lot of advantages here for Tennessee. Again, the one outlier, maybe those explosive plays. Of course, you got to watch out for that against any opponent right now. Clearly, Missouri didn't have explosive plays, and they laid some on you. So, but then the crowd. I think the crowd is the main thing. Eliminate the crowd. Make sure that can't affect you. Now, I do think there's going to be a ton of Tennessee fans there. My parents and a whole set of their friends are going to be there, actually, just to start. I know other people that are going. It's a pretty easy drive from Knoxville or Atlanta, where a lot of Tennessee fans live. So I'm expecting a lot of Tennessee fans to be there, kind of like the LSU game where Tennessee fans sort of took over. So all of that considered, yeah, we didn't give this Tennessee team the credit that they deserved, but the game is on the road. Does that make a difference? I will go 51-17 in this one. That's my prediction. I think Tennessee by halftime is maybe like 31-10. Like they kind of have that lead, and then South Carolina's will is just broken. They just, we tried, and they phone it in from there, and Tennessee lays it on them in the second half. Joe Milton plays again. It just seems almost inevitable. And yeah, you bring in Chill Mode says it right here, Hyatt revenge game. It's just too much here for Tennessee, and there are plenty of games where it feels like there's too much there for Tennessee, and then there's some element in it where I'm like, what are we missing? What are we missing? What are we missing here? I want to find that thing, but somebody tell me, what are we missing here? If there's anything, because I'm searching. I went and I listened to South Carolina some South Carolina media members talk about this game, even they were like, hold them under 50. We're not really sure. Like they really were just like, what are you gonna do? Season's kind of over for South Carolina. Like, it's tough.
I just see like Tennessee blowing them out at halftime, and Shane Beamer get into the locker room and be like, "I don't know, guys. I don't have anything for you."
I mean, what are you gonna say at that point?
What do y'all think?
Yeah, here's a whiteboard, boys. Draw it up. I'm not sure what to do. Let's see some of your predictions. Big Ten Jeff says 45-13. I assume Tennessee. He's usually pretty pro Tennessee in his predictions, even though he's an Ohio State fan. Brittany says 59-17 Vols. Mr. Jones 69-0. Real nice score.
Nice.
John says Tennessee 52, South Carolina 21. Michael Allen 56-20 Tennessee.
Somebody predicted it was way back up there. I think I saw 75-6, and that's my favorite prediction that anybody's put on there because it might seem unrealistic, but it's not. It's definitely not. And that would be full Josh Heupel going, I do not care what you think about me running the score up because I'm going to keep doing it. But it's that little bit of, well, at least South Carolina got a couple of field goals, Yeah, it's even more. That's even worse than like 75-0. I feel like.
Well, James says 55-17. Ed 38-10. Tennessee Nugs 70.
Is that the halftime? Is that his halftime score? 38-10.
Yeah. Ed is being pretty generous to South Carolina there. 38-10. Nugs 70-3.
Yeah, see, I love that. Hit 70. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that would be so awesome. Agent Ghost says 66-21. Zadam says 65-9 Tennessee. Power T says 64-3. So thinking total blowout. A lot of people thinking 60 plus. The only thing that keeps me from the 60 plus prediction is just how you have to think about what it will take to get there. And like what it took against Missouri was 2 bomb touchdowns from Joe Milton. Like it'll be, if you're winning by that much, Joe Milton is playing. And he has had moments where he doesn't do that. So I'm kind of saying Joe Milton comes in and doesn't have as many bomb plays this time, maybe has one, and that gets them to 51 in this one. But that's the only thing that keeps me from a 60 plus prediction in this one. I think Matt says 60-14 is his.
It's crazy. So, that's the reason that Hendon Hooker's stats aren't. I mean, they could be way better than they are, but there's been so many games where he hasn't even had to hardly touch the ball in the fourth quarter. I mean, UT Martin, he didn't touch the ball in the second half or very beginning of the second half, I think. I mean, that's been the thing. Their success and their efficiency and ability to outscore opponents has been what's kind of kept him from taking a huge lead in this Heisman conversation.
I want all of that. I want it to be 300 yards to Hyatt, all from Hooker, and then 4 touchdowns there just in that single matchup. Yeah. And then Joe Milton comes in and throws 4 bomb touchdowns.
I'd like to see a big Cedric Tillman game. Get him back kind of where he was last year. I mean, it hasn't been his fault. Obviously, that Akron, that dirty team that Tennessee played early in the season, kind of screwed his season up for him and really hurt his draft stock probably because he was a first round, kind of being talked about in the first round conversation, and that has faded. Hyatt's in that conversation now, but Tillman's not, and it's no fault of his own.
Yeah, I really, that would be very nice also, because I am sure they're not just going to throw it to Jalen Hyatt, even though that would be fun.
They could if they wanted to.
That's true. Yeah, come and stop it. Blocksville says 76-6. There's another great one there.
Yes.
70-point win.
Oh, my God.
I hope so. Please.
You got to leave the SEC if you're South Carolina after that. You got to pack you up and go to the ACC.
I mean, I saw some people in those comments where they were – I don't know that they were just flat out saying fire Beamer, but they were kind of insinuating it.
Yeah, I don't think you fire the guy. I mean, I know we make fun of Beamer, but he's done an okay job there. I think he's just been saddled by a really bad offensive coordinator. Same thing has happened at Kentucky with Mark Stoops. Yeah. Mark Stoops has a body of work. He's had success there. He's won 10 games at Kentucky, which is not easy to do. I don't think what's happened this year is a representation of who he is as a coach. I just think he hired a complete idiot to be his offensive coordinator, and that dude looks foolish every time he talks.
Yeah, you hear that, Mike Vrabel? You know what can happen when you hire a good offensive coordinator? You end up like Tennessee.
Yeah, Titans ran a flea flitter. I mean,
I literally texted you. They were kind of moving the ball in that second half, and I texted you in Austin, and I said, I don't believe for 1 second that Todd Downing is calling these plays.
You're probably right.
I mean, because they have the whoever the backup offensive coordinator there that they hired during the offseason.
Is it Tim Kelly? Is that his name?
Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah.
I was like, I bet it's Kelly calling those plays because this actually looks half decent. That's it. We all think that this is going to be a romp for the Vols. Hopefully, we are all correct. And Tennessee basketball, get back on the horse. You'll be all right. Just get it figured out, Rick. I believe in you, please. Thank you. And other than that, I think that is it. Anything else for the good folks at home, Zach?
Oh, that should be it. Hopefully, we have some extra stuff this week in the works. Hopefully,
yes, and I think we will. It's not. Nothing has happened yet, but we're pretty sure it will. And so look out on the channel, on the A to Z Sports channel for more. We've been doing these interviews and they've been really fun. And so keep an eye out on the A to Z Sports channel, A to Z Sports Nashville, I guess, specifically because there is an A to Z Sports Dallas channel also. And hey, go follow them too, especially if you're a Cowboys fan. They're doing awesome stuff over there. But on the A to Z Sports Nashville channel, I believe we're going to have more content this week. So keep an eye out there. Otherwise, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, A to Z Sports.com. You know where to find it. You're here with us. You've been watching. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Ragan. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. We couldn't have the show without you. We're just too thankful for how awesome everything's been going this whole season. So, me and Jonathan Crompton, of course, will be back. Cromp is back this week on the post-game show. Lucas did an awesome job filling in, but Crompton will be back this week for the South Carolina halftime and post-game show on the A to Z Sports YouTube, Facebook, wherever you want to watch that. And I think that's it. That's all the administrative work we got. Charlie Burris, Zach Ragan, A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.